Was Israel a Western project in Palestine, a tale of divine warfare, domination and genocide, on a 28,165 km² piece of land? Amidst the flames of the Israel-Palestine conflict, what mysterious force propelled 81-year-old President Biden on a 10,000-kilometer journey to Tel Aviv, navigating a 15-hour plane ride? Is the Israel-Palestine conflict just a holy war? Or are there covert forces at play, pulling strings in the shadows? Who was the Rothschild family and what role it played in the creation of Israel? What is the agenda of Greater Israel? Many people think that Palestine-Israel conflict started with creation of Israel in 1948, but that is just a pixel, not a whole picture. Story is as old as Abrahamic religions are. The term Abrahamic religions refers to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, which all trace their spiritual heritage back to the figure of Abraham. Around 4,000 years ago, Prophet Abraham was born in today's Iraq. The religious and historical texts suggest that Abraham moved to Jerusalem on divine instruction. Jews believe that God made a special covenant with Abraham and that he and his descendants were a chosen people who would create a great nation. Abraham's son Isaac and his grandson Jacob also became central figures in ancient Jewish history. Jacob took the name Israel, and his children and future generations became known as Israelites. The disputed territory remained under Jewish control. For Jewish, Jerusalem is an ancestral homeland where their religious leaders were born, and it is promised land for them by God. They cherished it because historical buildings like Western Wall and Temple Mount has immense impact in social and religious fabric of Judaism. Jerusalem was the capital of King David's Israel in the Hebrew Bible, as well as the city where David's son Solomon built his temple. In biblical times, Jewish people who could not make a pilgrimage to the city were supposed to pray in the direction of it. For Christians, it is the site of pivotal events in Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Via Dolorosa, and Mount of Olives are central to Christian tradition. Pilgrimages to this sacred city offer believers a spiritual journey in the footsteps of Jesus. For Muslims, Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock are two of the holiest sites. According to Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad was transported from Mecca to Jerusalem during the night journey and ascended to heaven from the rock inside the Dome of the Rock. Jerusalem played a key role in early Islamic history, serving as the first Qibla and as a significant political and administrative center during various Islamic caliphates. But all these are just one side of the coin. If we flip it, there is another view. Disputed area is located at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe. The region's geography makes it a crucial hub for trade, transportation, and strategic military positioning. Leaving aside the biblical aspect, establishing a national home for Jewish people in Palestine seemed to be included in the colonial agenda for the first time by Napoleon of France in 1799. He aimed to obtain the loyalty of Jews, use Jews as his agents throughout the world, by rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem, enabling Jews to return to Palestine and to pose a threat to the British in the region. However, since Napoleon was defeated, his plan was not realized. Aside from France, Russia and Germany also showed their interest in Palestine, and in view of this, the British were alarmed and looked for a way to influence Palestinian territories. In 1840, British Foreign Minister Lord Palmerston wrote a letter to Lord Ponsonby, British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, in which he asked the ambassador to convince the Sultan that if the dispersed Jews living across Europe were encouraged to return to Palestine, the Ottoman state would benefit from the wealth of Jews. Palestine was a buffer to Egypt and a gateway to Iraq, and more importantly, was strategic in its location to protect India, as well as to control trade in Suez Canal, shortening the route between London and India at least 4,000 miles. A Jewish homeland was a good idea for the British because they were well aware that if another country controlled this cordon sanitaire, it could cut the British connection with India. Eventually, the British took Jews to their side and quickly began to award them with a nation-state via the Balfour Declaration, which reads, "His Majesty's government accepts the principle that Palestine should be reconstituted as the national home of the Jewish people." The U.S. nevertheless has continued its unconditional aid to Israel, which has totaled $158 billion since World War II, more than the U.S. has given to any other nation. The U.S. supported the creation of a Jewish state after World War II, but in the initial decades of its existence, the bond wasn't particularly remarkable. President John F. Kennedy made it more a point of emphasis, calling it a special relationship, predicated on a shared commitment to Israel's right to exist in peace in 1962, and the relationship only really began to flourish following the 1967 war. That war saw Israel defeat a coalition of Arab states, suffering comparatively few casualties in the process with little help from outside forces, and occupy swaths of new territory, including Gaza and the West Bank. The U.S. had been concerned about Soviet influence in the region and that the conflict could have expanded into a Cold War proxy battle if it had escalated further. But Israel put a quick end to it and made itself an attractive ally at a moment when the U.S. was preoccupied with the Vietnam War and did not have the bandwidth to get involved militarily in the Middle East. What's key about the '67 war was Israel defeated the Arabs hands down in 6 days with absolutely no American military assistance, said Joel Bainan, a professor of Middle East history at Stanford University. What that said to the United States was, "These guys are good. We are in a mess in Vietnam. Let's be connected to them." And things developed gradually over time. On December 6, 2017, President Donald Trump broke with previous U.S. foreign policy and announced that the U.S. would recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, effectively endorsing Israeli control of the city. Currently, Israel receives $3.8 billion in military aid from the U.S. annually under a memorandum signed in 2019. Israel has also developed advanced manufacturing capabilities such that there are very few weapons or crafts that it could not produce on its own without U.S. assistance, Bainan said. The exception might be F-16 and F-35 fighter jets, but even parts of those crafts are currently manufactured in Israel. That has made Israel the 10th largest military exporter in the world, and also made the U.S. conversely reliant on Israel. The military-industrial surveillance complexes of both countries are very tightly intertwined, Bainan said. American capacities are now to some extent dependent on Israel. The U.S., which has supported the formation of a Jewish state since World War II, is Israel's top trading partner, with annual bilateral trade of nearly $50 billion in goods and services. U.S. officials have also long maintained that America's relationship with Israel holds strategic value as a stabilizing force in the Middle East, keeping at bay unrest that would threaten access to the regional oil supply on which America remains dependent. U.S. aid has helped build up Israeli weapons capacity, and human rights groups have documented incidents in which those weapons were used in the commission of war crimes and unlawful attacks in Gaza even before the war broke out. Another factor that involved in creation of Israel was the Rothschild family, a wealthy European banking dynasty, played a significant but indirect role in the creation of Israel. The family, particularly Baron Edmund de Rothschild, was involved in supporting Jewish settlement and development in Palestine during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Baron Edmund de Rothschild, known as the Guardian of the Jews, provided financial backing for various Jewish agricultural settlements in Palestine. His support helped establish several colonies, contributing to the economic development of the region. These efforts were philanthropic and aimed at improving the lives of Jewish settlers. Now a question arises that what is actual Israel agenda now? The concept of a greater Israel, according to the founding father of Zionism Theodor Herzl, is a Jewish state stretching from the Brook of Egypt to the Euphrates. It is widely believed that this secret agenda of Greater Israel includes demolishing of Aqsa Mosque, rebuilding of Solomon Temple, ethnic cleansing of Muslims from the land, and inclusion of Palestine into Israel. Many other Zionists also say that Greater Israel included the land from the Nile in the west to the Euphrates in the east, comprising Palestine, Lebanon, western Syria, and southern Turkey. It is also important to keep in mind that the design of Greater Israel may not strictly be a Zionist project for the Middle East. Many experts and academics have stated recently that it is an integral part of U.S. foreign policy, aiming to extend U.S. hegemony to the Middle East, as well as fracturing and balkanizing the Middle East. As the ancient echoes of Palestine resonate through time, President Biden's mysterious journey to Tel Aviv, the Rothschild family's philanthropy, and the elusive agenda of Greater Israel, form a tapestry of enigma. In this saga of divine legacy and geopolitical maneuvers, questions linger in the air. Is it a holy war or a puppetry of so-called human rights champions? As we navigate the crossroads of history, religion, and ambition, the narrative remains a riddle waiting to unfold.